This is the Real Coaching Podcast. I'm Joe Filiol, coach of JFT Crew, the multinational triathlon squad, focusing on the Olympic pathway. Today, we're going to talk about championship coaching with a colleague I've known for a long time called Joachim Willén, who's a coach from Sweden who coaches rising star Vasco Vilaça. And before we go into that, I want to thank those who are supporting the short ebooks I've put out on my website, joefilio.com/shop. I think these books, I should say, each of them it could be described as a chapter in a future long form book. But the impetus for this is putting some thoughts together from various presentations I've done, and sharing some of that information. I think in the future, I'd like to put that into a comprehensive resource. But in the meantime, supporting my work gives me a sense of the interest and the desire to take some of the big picture lessons away. It's a quick read, but I think can add value for, in particular, coaches, but athletes are interested in some insight into my work, and kind of goes a little bit into the restart of the Real Coaching Podcast, as I said, season 3, if you like, and really, what is the, I think about who are the ideal listeners? What's the niche here? And of course, some of you will have followed my work if you follow ITU Triathlon, World Triathlon, Olympic Triathlon, then certainly that may be how you got here. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about or have talked about is pretty inside baseball for high performance that might not apply to every athlete context. But I think the idea that we can learn sort of top down, we learn from the best and apply to our everyday environments, whether that's an athlete, even if you don't compete in short distance. I mean, not many athletes, of course, compete in draft legal racing, but the principles of preparation, the principles in terms of attitude, behavior, commitment, daily habits, daily environment, how we organize training, that's applicable to any sport, any discipline of triathlon. So hopefully there are some takeaways from that. The talks like the triathlon swimming revisited, perhaps a little more oriented towards age group type training with more constraints. But I think in general that's what I wanted to explore a little bit is just this micro niche of Olympic triathlon, and where I suppose I see the business of coaching is my coaching is different than most coaches that we come across that put things into the public sphere. Since I typically don't do age group coaching in present. Of course, I used to do a lot of that, and that's how I started. But my niche really now is elite athletes, professional athletes, and part of the desire to share these insights, the knowledge and experience I gain is because I do believe that can apply to any athlete. But of course, in terms of on the business side of things, my primary clients are federations and elite athletes, professional athletes. So it's like a B2B model. So again, quite different than most coaches that you come across. Certainly, everybody and their uncle's a triathlon coach these days. It doesn't require a high bar of entry, and I think my approach, I think the reason it can be interesting, because my angle here is not marketing a particular tool or technology, or it's really filtering through what I think is the essentials and what we actually do. I think the message of that I try to spread to other coaches, but also athletes, is we don't need this full sophistication to achieve top performance, and everyone manages in constraints in sport and coaching. Not everyone has a huge budget or unlimited resources. And I think what we demonstrate in my daily practice and work is that we can succeed in a very lean, simple approach by applying the basics well. Again, fond of saying we should focus on the basics, on the 99%, not the 1%. And almost nobody gets the 99% right. It's very hard to do the basics well, and so that's our focus. So that's little insight into the micro niche of this podcast and of coaching. And the discussion today with Joachim is really going into the weeds on coaching. But again, I think this can apply to any athlete, self-coached, or just thinking about how you think about preparing for competitions that are important to you, and the principles. I think you can draw value from that. And if not, then you certainly get an insight into how we think about preparing for championships, whether that be Olympic Games, World Championships, anything important to the athlete or coach. My first experience with Olympic Games was not directly in coaching, but when certainly being in the aftermath of Simon Whitfield winning gold in Sydney in 2000, and then being involved in the Olympic campaign for Athens 2004. Where an athlete didn't qualify, but being part of that process. And then, of course, Beijing 2008 with Simon Whitfield winning the silver medal. London 2012 had athletes racing there and being involved in the build-up with British Triathlon and then independently. And then, of course, in Rio, we from our squad, we had 10 athletes racing. And now in the build-up to Tokyo, it goes on. And then, of course, as I said, I think this kind of discussion applies to championships, world championships, or just any important race, thinking about how do you frame your views on the race, how do you prepare so that the first experience you had, you don't make as many mistakes as are possible, and how do you avoid sort of learning from your mistakes, but instead being as ready as you can be for that context. So here is the discussion with Joachim Willén on championship coaching. So I'm here with Joachim Willén, a Swedish coach who I've had a long history relatively now. I was looking back, Joachim, at some of our email exchanges as far as going back to 2014 when you were in contact with some questions. I enjoyed looking through all the questions we've corresponded on over the years. And today we're going to talk about your project on championship coaching, a course that you took that you can get into. But first, like to understand a little bit more about your own history, how you got into coaching, and I guess we can start with your sporting history. So you were an athlete that raced at the Sydney Olympic Games, that's right. And what led to that point? What was your starting point in sport?
I come from a swimming background. Started a long way ago. And I had the fortune to be at really good environments at the youth age. So they were Olympic medalists in that environment, and the coach was really, really good. And at the end of my junior age, I transitioned into triathlon because a good friend of mine tried to pick me over to the sport. So I followed, and from that, I continue with the triathlon.
How often does that happen in terms of talent identification? That it's like these personal connections that creates that journey into triathlon.
uh, I think that's a little bit of the Swedish way. Like triathlon coaches see some potential good swimmers. That's one path, and then we try to connect with them and get them into the sport. And another path is through our gymnasium, I guess, where they can take a place and train for 3 or 4 years. But that's the two pathways in Sweden, which is mainly available, I think.
And so you went from a swimmer junior age. What age is junior for swimming? What does it go to?
20. So I was 20 years old when I started with triathlon. Yeah.
And what was the path like to the Sydney Games? Describe what that process was like.
Yeah, I got into triathlon and then I tried to I got friends with some triathletes, and they were the first training camp. I actually went to Australia just 2 years in as a triathlete. So then I got to train with Cole Stewart and Miles Stewart and Chris Hill and Locke Wolmerhaus, and it was way too early for me, but I really got a good view of the Australian arena with the they have this series like the Super League today. Chris McCormack was there as well, not in this training group, but racing I think it was 2S Blue. And then I got back to Sweden and tried to continue the sort of training that Cole did. And the year after that, I went back one more time with the same group. So I got an idea of how they trained. So that was my first years of triathlon. It was very hard to go and train with those guys, but it was fun. Probably not the best, but that's a little bit how I work.
Good. I was going to say it's interesting because well, Cole Stewart was one of the original sort of international squad models. The way he was operating, and this of course the mid to late '90s. And athletes from all over the world used to go train with Cole, and I think he's still coaching today. In fact, I saw Cole has a book about his experience, and I think you've got a quote in the front of that book. I was looking through that recently. But when you reflect on that time, as you say, maybe a little bit over your head as far as probably the level you were at or the experience you had, but what sort of takeaways did you reflect back on those periods? Do you think about those today?
A little bit the swimming. I came from a swimming background. We were like on the summer vacation, we were doing like 8Ks for each session, like 10 sessions a week, and the other session was around 7 and 8K when it was not on vacation. How good I swam on a lot less. I think the cold swimming was fitting me very well, also into the triathlon part. And I have my share of shin splints. I wasn't running too much at that point, trying to increase, but the shin splint hold me back a bit. So as I remember, it was also a very bike-based training. We did really good bike training in those areas, hills and undulating hills, and the group also did it very hard, or too hard for me, but yeah.
And some of those experiences do you take to your coaching today, in terms of either how Cole was as a coach, or particularly principles in terms of how you see, the difference in cycling training, or was it just a matter of kind of at that time that was what your learning points were?
I think I'm a sum of everything, I guess. But maybe this was a bit more in my early, when I started coaching in 2005. I looked back on all but the coaches I had, and tried to take the best of that. And then I see some commonalities between that, and it actually went back to my swimming coach, and then I also was coached by Dan Smith, and some settings of Simon Lessing, which I trained with. That made up when I transitioned into coaching. But the swimming sort of I took with me from Cole Stewart, and of course, as a person, he took very good care of me, and was very warm and kind. Helped me to develop to at least the best Swedish triathlete at that time, and by just showing caring. I remember he borrowed me his race wheel for a race in Australia, and just as a fresh triathlete, that was I thought that was very kind.
And you mentioned at the time there was the racing series, which was really the predecessor to the modern Super League, but a lot of the same format, different format, different order. It had different names at the time: St. George series and other series based on sort of an example of the surf life saving style racing. But you raced some of those as well, did you, when you were there?
No, I wasn't at that level, so I just watched them. But I got into the French Iron Tour, which was kind of European format of that, but not the Australian series. That was too high level for me at that moment. Yeah.
And the French Iron Tour, that's something probably not many people know about, but how was that, 5 days in a row of different distances?
I did it, if I remember right, I did it first time 97, and then 98, and then 2000, I think. I'm not sure, but the first time I did it, we had like 8 races and 9 days. So it was a 4 block and a rest day, and then a 4 block. And I mean, it was Olympic races, and it was sprint races, and it was duathlon, and yeah, that was pretty tough. Yeah, but I must say that was probably one of those races I did my best in. I really liked that. It was amazing. Yeah.
So you raced the Sydney Games, and then at what point are you thinking now you want to get into coaching? What was the spark for that step?
That's Sydney was 2000, and I didn't get into coaching until 2005, when I stopped my triathlon career, or what do you say? But during this athletic, when I was a triathlete, I started to study psychology and pedagogy, and I was generally very interested in training. So maybe that was a spark, or I found those subjects very interesting at that time, but had no path for it, so to speak. Yeah.
And so you were based on kind of your own interests, and so it grew from there. And what was your first sort of coaching job or appointment, or the first athlete you had? Can you think back at those times? Like, what was your first steps into coaching other athletes?
Um, it was actually a good friend of mine, the same man who got me into triathlon, Michael Torren. He also gave me the opportunity to start coaching, which is my job today. Like at the gymnasium, he was the head coach here back then. So when I stopped, I tried to qualify for Athens, but didn't manage that. So then he gave me the opportunity to start as a coach here in Motala. So he had influenced me my career very much by first getting me into triathlon and then get me into coaching as well.
And so the gymnasium. So let's talk about your current context. So that you've been there for a while. So what is the gymnasium? What is your current coaching environment like?
We work with youth and juniors, and at the last year here and in Motala they get the U23, and they can combine triathlon with their high school studies. They 16 years age, and they stop at 20. And we just, it's a Swedish system, RIG. They come from all over the country in Sweden, and they can apply for a spot. And then we have some selection and try to build the best group that we can. And because the usual studies are on 3 years, and they can do it on 4 years. So that's make it very training friendly. We get a lot of spots in between in year 1, 2, and 3, and then I catch up on year 4. So that's very good time for training. Yeah, we're just trying to set up the environment and as a regular training group, and trying to create daily training quality as good as we can.
And this is for this school is a school system driven environment, and it is for all sports. It's not just for triathlon.
No, the federation owns the Riksidrottsförbundet, like the head of the sports in Sweden, together with the special förbund, like the triathlon or the hockey or the swimming. They apply for starting a Riksidrottsgymnasium, and then then you can set up this thing.
And so you've been involved in this since how long? You're the head coach there, but how long have you been there?
2005, and the first 5 years I worked together with Michael, and he stopped 2010, and then another guy came in, Marcus Wernström. He's a head coach for our local swimming club. So he do the swimming, and I do the bike and running, but also the overview. So we're very fortunate to have a professional swimming coach at this school as well.
And you've had some interesting athletes come through there. And I suppose the most current or the highest profile one is this young Portuguese fellow. Why don't you tell us a bit about Vasco?
Yeah, Vasco. I think he moved to Sweden 3 years before he started at our school, 2015, I think it was. And they moved to Sweden because of the parents' jobs. And they are interested in triathlon, so they saw what we did with previous generations, and that caught his interest. So he did the application, and because of he couldn't, the grades are quite important because you move from home, so you need good grades. So the sport also is working out good, because if you start getting trouble in school, the sport doesn't work. But since he didn't have the language, his grade was a little bit low. But we saw that he was a smart, young, ambitious man. So he took a place that year, and since then. So me and Marcus started to coaching him in 2015, and he has this Portuguese blood in him. So he's what you say, a lot of energy.
And he's probably really more come into prominence during the 2020 season, although rather short, but. I mean, we've been aware of him internationally, of course, just in case that everyone listening, Vasco Vilaça, the Portuguese athlete who he was second or third in Hamburg at the World Championships this year.
Second in Hamburg and second in Calgary, just behind Vincent there, yeah.
So really, quite a nice step from where he's been. And when you think about his processes, his journey this year, what do you think attributed to him taking this step this year?
No, he's progressed over the years, so it's layer by layer. But as he said, maybe it took a little bit bigger step. But in all perspective, like. It's a different format. It's not a VTS. It's just one race. But he did 2 good races. But he's been doing consistent. When he's been in Sweden, I should say, he's been doing consistent good training, and that has. He's a really hard-working guy. Doesn't leave anything to what you say slump or he does it, and he really wants to be the best he can. So the layers of these years from 2015 and up till now, and maybe a little bit that it was he get a really good training block this year as well. He started out in Portugal, and then he didn't have the swimming, but then he came back to Sweden, and we were allowed to swim from when he came back, and then he just trained consistently all towards that race in Hamburg and Calgary.
And so if we transition to your coaching championship coaching project, what initiated this? This is an independent course you've embarked on, and what's the genesis of this project?
It's also a coach that I talk with some, Karl-Axel Hageskog. He's a professor in leadership and also mentoring the coaches at Olympiatoppen in Norway. He started a new course. I don't know that I heard of that before, like championship coaching. It's really just into championship coaching and how you develop that. So we started up with value-based leadership and how to prepare for the championship and being on the site. And then the last block was evaluation and development from each championship or competition, so you get better and better for each competition or championship.
And what drew you to this course? Like what, I suppose the answer probably is coach development. But I mean, because you've as I alluded to in the introduction, you've been kind of actively engaged in kind of your own development and interest and curiosity, and I suppose this fit into that way of thinking. Find something to grow with.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You try to find small. You do reading and listening and discussing and talking to you and other coaches, and that's the foundation, sort of. And then you try to find strengths or weaknesses, like projects to work on. This was just a 10-week course, but quite high tempo, on very, on, like you said, advanced. So it was just very good coaches, that we, based on a lot of discussion between us, and Carl Axel that leading those discussions, and so we can have this portfolio for when we hopefully come to some championships and use this knowledge.
And reading through in some of the discussions that we had through the course of through the process of you doing this course, I mean, I think it's interesting, I guess, from a number of different angles. One of them is from how do you best prepare for these big coaching moments when you do have an opportunity. Of course, when you everyone is gonna. Well, when you have the opportunity to coach at an Olympic Games or from an Olympic athlete the first time, well, that's you will learn from that. But the better prepared you can be before you get there is, I suppose, the impetus here.
Yeah, we talked about that. Like maybe like Carl Axel said, that you can train on every competition, and maybe like a club championship, that's your first championship, and then you have regional championship, and then you have Swedish championship, and then you have European championships and world championships, and then every fourth year Olympic championship. So you, all these are in the pipe or line of together with all other competitions as well, opportunities to learn for when it's really high pressure or kind of
when there's more on the line.
Yeah, when it's much a lot more online. Yeah.
I mean, I think the environment of the Olympic Games or World Championships or really any important competition, there's different things that come to the fore that are important, and through your project, which we'll go through. I mean, and it connects to recently I was asked to do somewhat, I thought, that like the effective characteristics of coaches are. And in endurance sport, we tend to focus so much on physiology and training and how to prepare physically. But as your project is about, but really what effective coaching and championship coaching is about, it's not so much the training, but how you look at the big picture, communication, relationships, your own values, and how you manage in different circumstances. That is the points that you're trying to develop.
Yeah. Like when I started out as a coach back in 2005, I think most coaches maybe started the training point. What training should I do? But over the years, with discussions with you, and I've seen that these things that you said is that's the foundation of coaching, and the physiology. It's, if you have the framework and it works, it's that's the easy part.
And indeed, of course, when I reflect on training, of course, training is important, and doing it well shouldn't be assumed. But at the same time, like the underpinning skills of coaching is not just the physiology, and that's kind of what you get into here. And of course I like the the preparation, as you say, for the different levels of championships. And there's this concept that I think about of you don't know what you don't know. And of course as you grow as a coach and gain experience, you kind of open those doors and what you can learn at the next step. And what younger coaches or coaches who are earlier in their career, you just you don't know about those characteristics yet. And the difference is, okay, what's your first Olympic Games experience, or backing up, could be first junior world championships or U23, then senior, and then going into those same competitions with different levels of athletes is a whole different thing. Going into a race where the performance goals are lower are different than higher performance goals. And and those things I think we can prepare for. And I think that's what the preparation that you're going through are kind of values and principle based and relationship based, communication based, because those underpin, I think, how you manage the various stages. Like, the better you're able to understand yourself, the better you understand how to build effective relationships, the more prepared you'll be for what you don't know yet. And every, I don't know if that process ever finishes, because you can say, well, what is it like to go in to Olympic Games with current world champion or the number one ranked in the Olympic ranking? Well, that's different. What is it like for the coach of Alistair Brownlee if he goes to Tokyo and as a double Olympic champion? That's a whole other unknown. And the idea that there are different factors in play there that you may not know how to manage because it could be unique. The psychological factors, what is the internal external expectation of performance. And so there's this whole level, like, we have to be ready for those experiences. And I think a lot of coaches, when they have an opportunity that comes along, they might not be ready to seize that opportunity and make the most of it. And I think that's kind of what you're trying to do here is get ahead of that a little bit. And I like in the introduction, you've got this quote: "The more you look, the more you see." Where did you come across that quote, and what does that kind of mean to you?
No, it's from The Zen and Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, a good book where the key point I take from this book, that you go along and you adjust along the way. That's the key point for me in the book. But you also need to start looking, like it's attention. Where do you put your attention? So he has this friend that's not putting his attention to the bike, while the main character is very intentional and making small adjustments on his bike as they go through the book. So I mean, this is, like you said, layers and layers, experience on experience, reading, listening, discussing. And also, as you said, I don't think you ever get to the finish layer until you decide yourself. So I mean, experience from this is crucial. And I can't imagine, or maybe I can imagine, but like you said, having multiple world championships, wanting to perform at the highest level, and being the coach for that is a totally different arena.
And I think the interesting point here as well is, I guess this contrasts with some of what we see in the coaching and sport world, where there's the kind of the desire to shortcut this process and to kind of be the instant expert. And I think because we're surrounded by so much information these days, data, information, it's at our fingertips. I think there's the tendency or desire to want to fast track kind of experience in a way, or to think you know more than you do. So I appreciate this kind of mindset, and I think the difference between coaches is I think you need a kind of humility to be effective. I think you need an appropriate level of self-doubt or questioning what you see and what you do, and certainly this idea that we always have to be learning and growing, so that, again, when we do have an opportunity, that we're able to take advantage of that. So I think, I appreciate this kind of mindset, and that quote really resonated with me. Again, the more you look, the more you see, the deeper you go into something, a topic, the more you realize how much there is to learn and how much you don't know. And there's the classic graphs. You could say the Dunning-Kruger graph, or the concept. Where at the beginning of your coaching journey, you realize you don't know anything, and then you could say the middle, or where I think certainly some coaches go through or get stuck, is when you think you know everything, quote unquote. You think you know a lot, and I certainly encounter a number of coaches, and I went through this phase as well. I think everybody does when you're into it a little bit, and you realize, and you gain some experience, and you think you know everything, you got the answer for everything. And I think it's the block for many coaches and people involved in high level sport, is they don't pass through this to the other side, which is you're back to realizing you don't know anything, because there's just, it's impossible to know everything. And I think that mindset of, okay, it's not that you literally don't know anything, it's recognizing how much there is to know, and that it's a never-ending process to get there.
Yeah, I just listened to a pod the other day. I think it was Carl and Ryan Holiday, and they talked about this, just like you said, and in the beginning you think it's simple, and you kind of know what to do, and then you get into it, and it gets very complex, very complex, and then maybe if you go further and even further, you can make the complexity very simple. And I think that's probably the goal, as you also been talking about, like it is complex with coaching and relationships, and getting everything together as good as possible at a given moment, and then you have to make all this complexity like really simple, and then you come to, don't change too much, just do what you regularly do, but and then it's almost sound too simple, but yeah.
And I think, certainly when I talk about keeping things simple, there's the Da Vinci quote. I don't know if it's originally from Leonardo da Vinci, but that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And I would say that one of the skills of effective coaching is the ability to simplify messages and filter complex topics down to the essentials, and that's a skill that everyone can develop. And I think particularly in today's world of so much information and data, it's never been more important.
Yeah. I think I had some in this work, if it was in preparation or from being on site. Good coaches know what to say and when to say it, and this is a crucial point, I think, especially when we come to big championships, where also a learning point from being on site was in the training process, you should be a coach, like get in the way of the athlete, so that athletes don't go to all the races they want to do, or do the training undisciplined, like creating some kind of discipline from them. But in the championship, you should get out of the way for the athlete and give it room to perform, sort of.
Indeed, that's one of the things that we've talked about, and that comes up is how coaches behave under stress and under pressure, and that's a big theme of championship coaching, or any coaching which is under any kind of stress or expectation is often we see this kind of concept of overcoaching, or as you say, in theory, I think in theory and practice, getting out of the way is the right thing to do. But under stress, we see coaches overcoaching, too much talking, the wrong moments, not picking the moments, and maybe, and the idea is that perhaps could negatively impact the athlete and their performance.
Yeah, for sure. And then you come to self-awareness, and if you don't develop yourself, you don't see that, and how that affects athletes. I haven't seen that so much, but I guess you have more experience from that. But yeah, and on the other, so they need to be aware what everything we do and say affects the athlete, and still we must need to be there for them if it happens something unforeseen, for example, then we need to step in and do stuff. But as long as thing goes well, I mean, it should be athletes that can take care of themselves and prime themselves for the race, sort of.
Indeed, when we're approaching championships, but again, this can apply to different levels of championships depending the coaching context. But of course, we want to prepare our athletes to be able to deal with those environments and learn at the lower levels. So we're not arriving and changing everything simply because it's a bigger, more important race. That we're helping to teach the athletes how to manage themselves at the lower level races.
Yeah. Like when I looked at the preparation in this course, it was quite clear, like the stability and the relationship was that for me was some kind of the basics, as you said, the stability, and then the course went into how to understand how to create stability, and that we talked about there was understanding the meaning of high performance and a good dialogue with the federations and the Olympic committees, so they don't, I mean, they usually want to change something, and if you should just do what you always do, then you don't want that change. So you need to control it somehow as a coach, I guess.
Indeed, that's one of the different dynamics that probably is unique to the Olympic Games, is the involvement of these wider bodies, the Olympic committees or high performance agencies who are involved with funding, and they can identify some sports or some athletes and the desire to get more involved. But of course, the irony of having not been involved probably through most of the process from development to qualifying, that's a tricky area to go into, and that was one of the topics, as you said, that you studied and looked into.
Yeah, we talked about this. You need to develop, but you still need to keep the basis that you have seen working. So we talked about a 12-year cycle and a 4-year cycle, and when you come off a a championship bigger. Like if you talk about the Olympics, you learn from that and take the next step, the next cycle. So you do some changes the fourth year from the championship, and then you just refine it. And the year before, you don't do any changes. You just do what you know works and keep it as simple as you can. And that's where, like you said, the federations want to be a part of something they haven't. They can be a part for a longer time, but maybe they want to do something extra because it's going very well, or it's not going very well. And then you need to understand, both as an athlete and a coach, that we should just do what we been doing, like almost like Corona training. Like we need to restrict ourselves and get the training done, and then we have these nice performances out of that. It's not a high altitude camp or this magic technology that gonna do this extra percent. It's just basic training and feeling good, be healthy, always have fun, of course, with the group, and get energy from that, and then get into the championship with. If it's a new championship, of course you have some learning points, but if you do your second championship, you should do it just one step better than the previous one, and everything you know from the VTS races that works, just do that, as I understand it.
Indeed, and these really are the skills we're talking about developing as a coach, and to prepare for these situations. Like, well, how do you manage these other stakeholders, Olympic committees? How do you manage these things that aren't necessarily part of coaching courses that you take at any level? And I mean, it comes back fundamentally to relationships, and and kind of recognizing kind of what you can control, what you can't control. But you bring up one topic through your or one concept through your course of this stability. What does that mean to you when you think about stability in the context of coaching and championships?
Now, as we've gone through here, I think stability for me as a coach, just being who I am, as I was the last year, and take that with me into pressure, and also everything we do as well, just doing it, and kind of controlling if there any change, trying to control it and not do it if it's not crucial. I mean, the change should be done further away from the championships, so kind of being a filter and keeping the right path for the athlete just before that. But I think that's stability, combined with safety and honesty, communication between the athlete and the coach.
Yeah, I mean, there's several layers there, isn't there? I mean, all good stuff has got layers, but the stability, like in the championship, you're talking about, in terms of your behavior, and I think, I don't, in this connects to the self-awareness part that you brought up. Is I think maybe not all coaches are aware how they behave under stress. It's something to explore. I think it's not easy. Self-awareness is not easy at all. I mean, they can say rule number one is know thyself, and I don't know anybody that gets to the full point of mastering that. You need some pretty external objective feedback, and even that's hard to do. But I think the point is athletes can detect if you're feeling stress as a coach, or you're more nervous than normal. It's going to be pretty obvious to them if your behavior is changed, and they'll pick up on that, and they they may think, well, if my coach is stressed, well, maybe I've done something wrong. Maybe I'm not ready, and of course we can't hide that general sort of anxiety, nervousness, but it's got to be directed in the right way so that it doesn't impact the athlete. And that's where we said before, over coaching, over talking, I've seen so many times, in-depth discussions, during the warm-up and or the days before, long meetings, these things that perhaps if they're not normal or typical is going to send a message to the athlete that the coach has doubts about their preparation, doubts if they're ready. As you said, everything that we say can make an impact on the athlete's ability to perform.
I just had a discussion with another coach here the other day, and you don't want to be maybe a stoic, silent coach, but you need to follow the athlete. Like if the athlete doesn't bring up the bad weather, you shouldn't talk about the bad weather. So you're following the athlete. If the athlete brings something up, you can like mirror that, or maybe change perspective. Oh, he's looking that way. He should be looking at the task at hand. So it's mainly just being there and following the athlete, and don't reflect your own thoughts and things on the athletes, because, as you say, it's gonna affect them somehow.
My big bugbear is always staff talking about the weather, and in particular, like when we've got Tokyo coming up, all these staff walking around commenting to the athletes how hot it is. It doesn't help. The athletes know it's hot, and we ought not to create anxiety about the environment. It's obvious, but it's one of those things that we do and we don't think about. But in a context like that can have a negative impact on the athlete.
Yeah, it's something that they pick up and maybe change things that we don't want to change. So I think it was you who said that stick to the facts and organize this. Like if you gonna say something at all, stick to facts and the swim start, the bike course, run course, go through that and maybe reinforce them in their tactics, but they should be their tactics, not the coach tactics. And maybe you have talked about that the week before, but you don't try to put something new on race day, just reinforce it if it's a good tactical option maybe. And then we're coming back to relations as well. The better you know the athlete, the better decisions you can make for the athlete when you see what's he or she doing, and then we're back at decision making and make it as good as possible for the athlete in an athlete perspective.
Indeed, and the better you know the athlete is a good point. In one of the things that can be different in these environments, these championship environments, but any major competition, is you get people involved who may not, or probably in many cases have not been involved in the athlete's process. And it's one of the challenges on the federation level of like how do you put the right staff around events. But in many cases, the staff aren't involved in the daily process and so don't have the connection with the athletes and their performance. You as a personal coach, you might have spent 200 or 300 days with the athlete in a year, where in some cases, performance staff, maybe a couple of dozen, and it's not easy to have the same insight into the athlete and how to support them. And of course, when we think as in the personal coaching role, well, we have to prepare our athletes to be self-sufficient and to manage, and even to manage, those kind of comments or things that might be unintended that could engender doubt or create some kind of negative energy. They have to manage that. And that's one of the skills. I mean, you connect a little bit into media and that side of it, but we can't control kind of how the outside world interacts with the athlete, and so we need to support and coach the athlete to deal with those kind of things in the most positive way possible.
For sure. And yeah, you said it, like we need to be very careful about picking the team. And what I wrote when picking the team, that they can provide energy and handle stress and stay out of the way, but still do everything to help the active if something happens. Was some points for the team, yeah.
In another area, you go into kind of preparation, and you did sort of talk about this already a little bit, but in terms of what to keep the same, how to manage like the physical preparation, and what one of the things that we've talked about, and certainly my philosophy is rehearsing how you want to be around build-ups to major events, and try to keep things similar as much as possible to what you've done before, so that you can learn and adjust. But about the physical preparation side, what were the insights that you took away from this area of study?
In the preparation, you mean?
Yes.
No, it's I don't know if I keep coming back to the same point, but keep it as you usually do. Don't try to do any other training that you don't know. Of course, you need to be flexible if you have some injury or sickness or something like that. But just don't try to go to camp that you haven't done before. Stick to the training that you know create results, or your lowest kind of form, and then maybe you ease up a little bit different to a bigger championship that you also know works in the past, but physically they're just doing the same thing as you've done before. Or was it something other you thought about?
No, that's it. I mean, and I appreciate you say you kind of repeat yourself. I often say I feel like a broken record a lot of the time, because I say the same things over and over. But I think that the context here is in the wider performance environment. What we're saying is not always done, or it's not easy to do, but it's not always done. And there's that kind of this big push to add value, to do something extra, to find the one percenters, and I think it's fascinating the impact of this sort of marginal gains culture from the last 8 or 10 years. Is it's so easy to focus on that stuff. Where can we get an advantage? What can we do differently? And for most of us in our coaching context, in our athlete environment context, adding a new area can detract from other areas. Adding a new interest, or if you want to pursue some performance advantage, what you think might be, there's a real risk to getting derailed on the basic things that are going to get the athlete ready.
Yeah. I took with me that careful preparation without making it complex. So that's also a journey, I guess. But a more experience you have, you can be careful and create something. But if you know that you have done your best from what you know now, and of course try to do it better to the next time. But that's we talked about it on the course. It creates some kind of safety for both the athlete and the coach, and this safety can make athletes and coach perform more freely. And of course, as you said here in the beginning, a big championship have a emotion perspective. So also the self-management, you have to know yourself and how to handle these emotions that's gonna maybe be a divider in how you perform. If you gonna be at your best and compete against the best.
I think, you know, when the cliche that sport is, I don't know, 90% mental, you know, when often you hear this often it's in, you know, professional sports, you know, but this is what they're talking about is how you handle the environment, how you handle situations. That part of it is so important, you know, and I think, as you say, this concept of safety, of knowing you've done your best, and knowing that, you know, that almost nobody ever has a perfect preparation. You know, it's not usually the story of somebody that wins championships is everything went smoothly all year. I had no problems and I won the race. You know, that's just rarely ever the case, and I mean, if that happens, great, but it's not something that you can make happen, because there's so many factors that go into performance, uncontrollable things. You know, there's so many things. You know, and I think of you know, Javi Gomez Noya not competing in Rio, ultimately come back to a bike crash 4 or 5 months before. You know, stuff like that. It happens. It happens to the best. You can't control everything, but of course, how we deal with what happens, and how we deal with that. And you know, when I reflect, you know, in the build up to the Beijing Games, for example, you know, and just knowing that some athletes maybe were injured, and they, you know, before, and then you go into the race, some of them thinking, well, maybe I'm not going to be able to perform because I had this injury. But, you know, how do we, you know, it's the skill here ultimately in coaching. How do we manage that, what happens and doesn't happen, and still find a way to get the best performance possible on the day? And that it's not an easy one. That's certainly advanced skills, because you have to be able to have the perspective and ultimately build the experience. I suppose that's where it comes into, because you can say, well, we've been in this situation before, but I think you can still lay the groundwork for that before you have those experiences. And I suppose that, again, that's part of what this project and thinking is about, is being ready for those situations with the right perspective and values before you get there.
Yeah, we talked about the unforeseen, how to, as you say, handle the unforeseen, and that's a lot of experience. And then you also have the unforeseen as a obstacle, but you can also have it as a possibility. So that's two different unforeseen. And as we said, the competition routines is crucial, but also have the flexibility to accept things that you don't control. But the unforeseen, I saw it as like that's problem solving and being available, and give perspective and refocus for the athlete, while the possibilities, that's a lot of experience, and maybe you can train on that. But if I have an expectation, is it right or is it wrong? Can I do some behavior in advance to get this a little bit better? But like you say, you need to know where you're putting your attention, and maybe first learn if your experience and instincts tell you this right behavior to do to make a advantage for your athletes. I don't know what you say about that, but
yeah, I mean, I think that this is the basis to be ready for what happens and doesn't happen. Is what you're saying here, like you know, and it connects with this, one of the principles, I suppose, that any coach should go through is understanding their own values and perspectives, and something you talk about, sort of value based leadership. for development, and the self-security, knowing yourself. How do you live your own values? Because whatever I think in general we can say stressful situations can accentuate some of things that are there in your behaviors or attitude that may not be present all the time. So it tends to make I think negative traits or traits that can have a negative side more prominent. So knowing yourself and you know and fundamentally, of course, the relationships, knowing the athlete and investing in that beforehand, well before you get to a championships. But in that process, the better the relationship, the stronger the relationship is, the more likely you're going to have success in those situations.
Yeah. Like I wrote the first line, and if you come to a championship and doesn't have those strong values, so those good relationship and careful preparation and discipline, then you don't set up for a good championship, I guess. That's what you say, the basics. So everything runs smoothly, that you together in a partnership with the athletes and the federation, of course, and knowing that you can do each other better. The coach can do the athlete better, and but likewise the athletes can also do the coach better. So those basics must be. You cannot start working with them on a championship. That they must be there.
There's another quote in one of your in the value-based leadership side where you say, at the end of the day, people will not remember what you said or did. They will remember how you made them feel. And I think that sums up also what you're talking about there.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I'm into that stuff. Like, I think kindness is a good way to go, and that doesn't mean that you're. Depends where you come from, but it's not softness or something. You can be. I mean, if you use that together with honest communication, you don't need to yell, or you don't need to be angry at your athletes. You want to help your athletes. That's the basic of the coach, and you want them to succeed. You do everything you can to make them succeed through planning the training very cautiously, to plan what you say, to have them succeed both in the development process, to win every session, and that builds the confidence to perform at bigger championships. So where you also, it's just honest communication instead of, I don't know what the norm is, but not yelling. Just be truthful and honest to your athletes, and you still can be kind.
I think it's not so common what you're talking about. I think, for a variety of reasons. When we think of sort of the stereotypical old school coach, perhaps that is used to treating athletes like children. I mean, not that you should shout or yell at children either, but you used to treating them like participants in an activity who need to be told what to do, but not like adults, not like people with autonomy and ability to make their own decisions, and it's tricky. And as you said, you of course treating people with respect, with kindness, with intention, and also balancing that with being honest and direct when you need to be. And certainly I see both sides of those. I see coaches who really behave as friends of the athlete and always say positive things even when the situation doesn't warrant that, and are always complimentary, and the athlete can do no wrong, and like friends, and this tends not to lead to performance. And then there's the other side is being too direct and not, being direct and honest with your feedback, of course, can go very wrong. I mean, that's one of the classic mistakes we can make in coaching is we decide I need to be direct, but say it in a way that the athlete doesn't hear that. They only hear criticism and, personal criticism, or they only hear accountability on them and not on the coach. And I think there's an art of figuring this out, is like, what's the way to effectively communicate? What's the way that the athlete has ownership and autonomy to make decisions, but also you as a coach provide value and real direction that they need to hear, and figuring out how to say that the right way is what effective coaches do.
Yeah. We all want to be joy and togetherness is big two pillars in coaching, and you want to have a joyful journey. You go to work every day. You want to be have a good group, and even if it's professionally, you need to have a good time. So that's the way of building it. I think trust and we're coming back, like I say, kindness, safety, and the athletes need to be curious. I think you talked about that, to be a student of the sport, and we as coaches need to say what they need to hear sometimes to get better, in all well-meaning, but we cannot just go around and tell them what they want to hear, because then it's going nowhere.
Indeed, and then that's again one of the common reasons why I think athletes don't improve is coaches and others around them just telling them what they want to hear. Because it's a really interesting point you make about that we need to find joy in the process, find happiness in the everyday, because certainly we can reflect across sport that you think that winning is gonna find you happiness, but the reality is it's not, and we know this from all kinds of examples of different athletes who have gone through post-Olympic depressions or general mental health issues because they've spent their whole life pursuing this goal, and then they realize on the other side of it there's not happiness. There's a documentary that I haven't seen, but I've read about, that Michael Phelps features prominently in, about something about like the price of gold. I think it's on HBO in the US, which is why I haven't been able to see it. But this is a theme that's becoming more prominent recently, as kind of the awareness of mental health has increased, and the environment that sport operates in. Certainly there's been a lot of comments and criticisms about bullying behavior, about sort of hostile environments, and much worse. I mean, of course there's examples of gymnastics in various countries where really the environment is really horrible. But there is a balance in high performance that we need to walk, which is about how to say the truth in order to get improved performance, and say it in a way that's heard, and that that really adds value, as you said. And the other part that just makes me reflect on what you're saying is that joy in the process, and understanding kind of the process every day kind of is the point in the end, and we have to. And it doesn't mean it's easy, doesn't mean it's always fun or good. I used to have the expression I haven't used in a while. We have to change our definition of fun, because I think pursuit of hard goals, pursuit of hard things is fun, but it's not easy. But that's I think where we reflect in our coaching process, like figuring out how to solve the puzzle, figuring out how to solve hard problems. It's not easy, and it's not always enjoyable in the moment, but figuring that out, that process, I think, is the point ultimately.
Yeah, and another point on feedback there, I try to put it is like it's a gift to get feedback, to get better, just as you said. Otherwise, we won't grow, and you have to be open to that sort of feedback and not take it as a negative thing. It's a gift that makes you better.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that the quote, I think it's from Stuart McMillan, who's an athletics coach at Altus in the US, and it's really going to the to this external reward part, which makes me think of this is not to complain when you realize ultimately no one externally cares whether you've produced something or not. Because those who understand what producing athletes means do not control the process of rewards and incentives. And really the main point here is enjoy your hard-earned results and the chance to live a life among great people, and great people doing great things and solving problems. And I think that's the essence of ultimately what this coaching and certainly on the path to championships is about.
Yeah, for sure. Enjoying and investing in good relationships and get them to like this really important beliefs, like believe in me, believe in yourself, and believe in us. Yeah, that's crucial, I think. Yeah.
And I guess I can say from a point of privilege, having been on the other side of a lot of performances where the athletes have achieved a lot of things, that what keeps me going in triathlon and coaching is those relationships. I've been to the point now where if an athlete wins another title, well, of course it's fantastic, but this concept of enough, what's enough, I've thought about a lot, reflected about a lot, and you mentioned an author called Ryan Holiday, who has got a number of interesting books and podcasts, and is interested in Stoicism, and he's got a whole The Daily Stoic and that side. But he had a blog some time ago about his own perspective of what enough was as a writer, and his process as an author. And coming on the other side of success, it resonated a lot with me in that simply more doesn't really move the needle in terms of coaching satisfaction. If we have ultimately in the delayed Tokyo, even if I had athletes go and win both gold medals, it's not going to be a life changer. It's not going to actually move really much. But having been part of that process with the athletes, sharing the ups and downs, the good, the bad, the ugly, the difficult, the blood, sweat, and tears, that's what's interesting, and I think where I find the desire to keep going, to progress, and I think I like to translate that down the development for younger coaches is finding joy in that process, in the everyday, and building those relationships where you really do have a partnership and you contribute and you grow together.
Yeah. I mean, this joy and togetherness is not exclusive to high performance. It's we have a fantastic group here in Motala, and I enjoy it a lot to go, because it's just they're ambitious and high goals, and they trying to do their best every day, and we have a good time, and then like some kind of reward is to getting the trust to go through the good and the bad, because that's not always what happens in this work, but that's very rewarding.
And that's a great point to end on, I think, is the summary of your journey back to your daily environment. And yeah, really enjoyed this project, supporting you through this project. And as always, the causes, the reflections, the questions we have, and it's been interesting reading your summary of everything that you worked through this championship coaching project, and indeed your perspective. Again, when I think back to my first mail from you in 2014, and pretty much every year you've been in contact as you've had new experiences and development, and of course you've been out to been to our squad camps a number of times, including earlier in 2020, and it's been really interesting seeing your journey in coaching. From those days, and seeing the opportunity all the way to this year, where you supported Vasco to a world championship podium. So that's quite a journey, and grateful to be part of that process in some way. And it's been really interesting hearing about this project and your journey today.
Yeah, same to you, Joel. Thank you for letting me interview you for this project, and letting me talk to you about coaching and visit you on site, training arenas during the years. It's it's layers on layers, and I'm put in 15 years now to be so I can be a coach, I guess. I hope, and continue to speak to you and about good training and how to build a base for good environments and good relationships and good daily training qualities. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Joachim. Look forward to seeing you around the circuit, hopefully sometime next year, depending what it looks like. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So that was a discussion with Joachim. I really enjoyed that chat. I think we got into a number of interesting areas. Of course, we prepared a little agenda of how it might go, but I appreciate the perspective that Joachim brings to his coaching. And although we've corresponded many times over the years, I think his perspective is useful for any coach who's come from an athlete point of view, but also is just growing their coaching. How do you grow your experience? How do you be ready to make the most of the experiences you have? And really, in the kind of modern context, there's the coaching courses that we can take. Really, they don't cover this stuff. The standard certifications. It's not easy to find ways to learn from this kind of experience. And I think the point of being a self-directed learner, of discovering for ourselves and taking an active participation in our own learning is key. And Joachim has demonstrated that and participated in that through a number of years now, through 2014, as I said in the interview. So as we move on, feedback, questions, direct is best. Podcast at joefilial.com. If you want to leave a voice question that we can use in the future, that's speakpipe.com/realcoachingpodcast, and these will be in the show notes. Thanks again for supporting my work on Gumroad with the ebooks, videos. I've got more in the pipeline coming up, and thank you for listening.